surface.
I mean, really what you're doing is preliminary practices, preliminary cleansing rituals. It's the same, it's a ritual thing. The purpose of any ritual is to ensure that all the elements involved in an action are suited to that action, so that everything goes smoothly. The purpose of ritual is to get as many of the mind, the senses, everything involved focused on that one thing. So protection and support is exactly the same. It's just using it in a very abbreviated form.
So we've got things like black tourmaline, labradorite, etc., but not to necessarily just limit yourself to what the books say. Keep an open mind.
No, whatever's appropriate, and that could be anything.
Could be anything.
You'll probably find that there'll be some things that will come up more often for you than others.
Yeah.
So that's then a good idea to have around you when you're working on other places.
Yeah. I was thinking about that blue chalcedony, which in that context was very protective, but it wouldn't. I would never have thought that it would have been. So it's the context.
Yeah.
In terms of essences and other vibrational, ways of working, so we've got them in the kit. What sort of essences in terms of trees and flowers? And
things like yew and oak, and a lot of the traditional trees and ones that are used for incense, like juniper, cypresses, and that sort of thing, all work beautifully well, and people will be familiar with.
Yeah.
But again, it's a bit like, you have a constitutional energy, and there'll be certain stones which will reflect that constitutional energy, and certain trees and flowers that will also reflect it.
Yeah.
So there'll be a general thing that you'll be drawn to, or that you'll some way be attracted to this rather than that.
Yeah.
Because it has a natural resonance to you.
Okay.
But there are neutral things as well, like that will work on a broad spectrum of scenarios, rather than just having your own personal stuff.
Yeah.
So some of the protection sprays or combinations that do a cleansing, purifying job.
And things like walnut.
Yeah.
And some of those that have also been used in essence form for a long time for protection.
I think once you said about always that if you've got a walnut in your pocket, it's always connected to the tree.
Well, this is it. I mean, you can't. We've got an acorn in your pocket.
Yeah.
You're still going to have openness around.
Yeah.
Or rabbit's foot.
Rabbit's foot. You'll have rabbits around here.
So, essential oils. Do they also? Once again, is it a constitutional thing? So
Yeah. But of course, you've got to be a bit more careful with those because there is a definite physiological effect.
Right.
So, in certain situations, you can't sort of say to somebody, "I'm just going to dog myself in such and such," because it might have the opposite effect on them.
Because there's a lot of chemistry present in essential oils, so you need to know about essential oils basically.
To actually feel confident about using them.
Yeah.
But if you do have that basic knowledge, then there's no reason why you can't use that as one tool for protection and support.
Right. So if that's sort of like some of the passives, in terms of the actives, then with visualization, and some of the visualizations we then give us that ability.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, even simple grounding most of the time will do a lot of good.
So the roots down into the earth.
Yeah, and there's anything like that. And as I say, there's lots of different visualizations that you can do.
Yeah.
And I think particularly if you're using for protection is always remember to move from the inside of your body out.
Right.
It's no good just putting a fence around yourself of light because you might have actually trapped inside it the one thing that you want to actually push away.
Yeah.
So always drive energy inwards out of doing that sort of work.
Yeah.
And mantra, singing, laughing, using sound.
Yeah. So, and also the physical stuff like the cook's hook.
That one almost said it right.
Yeah, I did.
Cook's hook up.
Cook's hook up. So that also that's one.
It's integrating as well.
You can actually
that one.
sort of like do it
without anybody knowing you're doing it.
Yeah. And then what's the other?
Meridian massage.
Meridian massage.
You can even just do that, visualising it.
Yeah.
Visualise and do it on yourself.
Yeah. And something I've done before that Michelle's done this one. When with them just holding the double terminated.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
Playing with us like
Yeah,
a stone in your
and
hand.
just turning it
Yeah.
around,
Yeah.
in your hand, yeah.
That
Just
causes
having-
so much energy to shift when
Yeah.
you're doing it. It's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice finding things that you can do without anybody else knowing what you're doing. You know what I mean? So you're not advertising the fact that you're actually sat there doing a visualisation or something.
Yeah.
Where you can just,
Visualisation of colour is really simple
Yeah.
as well. You've got the whole range of colours that you can visualise, and all you need to do once you've determined which one's going to be useful is just imagine you're breathing it in,
Yeah.
or putting it in from above.
Yeah.
But just imagine the air that you're breathing into your body is that colour.
yeah, and it doesn't have to be an intellectually chosen colour. You can just think, I need a colour,
Yeah.
whichever comes to mind.
There's a story Valerie Hunt tells in her book about she was with friends in the middle of somewhere like Mexico on holiday, and it was all single women. So of course, single women in Mexican culture is they must obviously be looking for a man.
Yeah, yeah,
So what they did was they actually just brought down red energy,
yeah.
and the men wouldn't go near them. And there was this one lady who had a problem with red, so she couldn't actually bring it through. So they put her in the middle and surrounded her with all the ladies that actually could do it. And that was just simple visualisation of colour
Yeah,
to protect.
yeah, that's right.
It's like the other night, James was listening to a visualisation on the computer, and it was bringing white light into your solar plexus. No grounding. This woman said there's no point grounding to the earth, and I could hear it, and I was like, James, this is making me feel sick now.
Yeah,
I can't do this. I'm not good with this. And he was sitting there, and he was like, "Come on, let's do it together. Hold your hand here. Collect the light." And I was like, "It's really making me feel sick now. I can't." And in the end, I went out into the kitchen to try and get away from it. I couldn't. I went upstairs, and I was sick everywhere. And he was then, "Oh, that's amazing." I was like, "Not when you're the one being sick, really, is it? When I tell you something's making me."
yeah.
And that was just bringing white light
Yeah.
in and holding it in your solar
but
plexus,
without
but
an
because it had no
Right.
grounding,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is it about white light? Is it always that some people saying you bring the white light in, you send the white light out?
Yeah, white
Oh,
light is.
I
We
know.
know what it's like when you see the theatrical lights around the screen, and if you've ever been into somewhere that's got that sort of lighting, you look at your face, it shows every line,
Yeah.
every pimple, every whatever. That's the trouble with white light. It's actually very harsh.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of information. You think it's all the colours mixed together.
Yeah.
It's a lot of information for the body to take on board.
Especially with no grounding.
Yeah, but if you just give it a tiny little colour, a little bit of twiddly bit of pink, or twiddly bit of blue, whatever, the body immediately, I can deal with this. It's not so overwhelming, and it's kinder on the system.
Yeah.
White can be very harsh. We always say that, if in doubt, use pink. Because then that, there's white within the pink, but there's got the red, you've got the grounding.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier for the body to deal with.
I think there's a sort of a conceptual problem with imagining white light, because people aren't actually visualising white light, or what they consider to be white light isn't. They'll be visualising something that is very bright.
Yeah.
But the thing that is very bright that we experience is sunlight, and that isn't really white in any imagination. But conceptually, brightness and whiteness tend to be lumped together, where it's not quite the same thing. But if you tell the unconscious white, then it'll try and draw up white, and white is, Sue says, very particular and special. And actually, it's not something that anybody really experiences in the natural world. There's brightness, but there isn't white light.
Well, that's something I always think about. I once did a meditation when somebody was saying send unconditional love, and I was like, I don't really know what that is. Send pink. I know what pink is, but some of the things that people will say send.
Yeah.
Do you really have a feeling?
Especially
of that
something
energy?
like unconditional love. I mean, that is a concept that is almost most human beings just don't know. Because even when mother with a little baby, it's not totally unconditional. It's a concept that the word that people bandy around, but there's actually very little understanding of it.
I think actually that there's not really you can't have unconditional love, because the quality of you can have something that's unconditional, but you can't have love that's unconditional, really, because love is to do with an object.
It's to do with
relationship with the object. So you can't have a relationship if it doesn't have any subject-object, which is condition. If you do get unconditional love, it suddenly doesn't become love. It's something else. It changes the level of its energy,
function.
and it's no longer what you could call as love as being understood as love. But by calling something that sort of transcendent feeling unconditional love, it confuses the issue to some extent, because love is a feeling, a strong feeling, therefore it comes from the emotions, from the heart, from the self, so how can it be unconditional? So, it becomes a highfalutin intellectual thing, which makes it very hard to actually, highfalutin, which makes it really difficult to actually, it's like one of those terms that, like a lot of terms in New Age philosophy, that is broadly understood by the people who use the language, but doesn't really mean a lot if you start to take it apart. But within the jargon, it's a thing that people can vaguely understand.
You sort of know what people mean.
Yeah.
So, question also. So there's the protection against other individuals. Let's say, I know there's other things that that aren't necessarily are quite what's the word I'm looking for? Neutral in terms of like objects. We'll get onto geopathics, etc. But what about groups? Because groups also have energies. And also, if you're a therapist, sometimes you're coming up against a group energy as well, or a family energy. You're working with a client, not just the client, is the family energy, or the energy of the group that they're involved with. Is there anything to say around those sorts of situations?
Run like hell!
Yeah, apart from run like hell. No, I think the thing is realising is that how does one put it? You can only achieve a certain amount of healing when you come across and you hit the programming, for want of a better phrase, that you can't move, like the family or the group. And it's what is the stronger. And if the person's desire to escape the family or to change the group is really very strong, then they will be open to more healing. But if the energy to actually stick within the group or to stick within the family and in the family's behaviour is too strong, then you'll only be able to get so far. And the thing is, it's not a failure on your part; it's part of the conditioning. And that's the trouble when you have big groups.
A group is an entity.
It becomes ensouled entity.
It's an identity and an entity. So if somebody is a group, then entanglement and fusion between the members. And so to change one part of that, one person, is pretty difficult. If it's a very strong and coherent group, because it's infiltrated. It sounds like a negative thing. It's affected every part of their the way they think, the way they behave.
The patterning and to break that sort of patterning requires not effort from you as a therapist. It requires effort from the client. Serious effort from the client.
So you can support.
You can support, but you really have to stand back and say, well, I can only do what I can do. Because this really is to do with them. And it may be that they go so far and then they go back within the group, and then a couple of years' time they try again.
The difficult thing with groups is usually if somebody is having problems with a group or a family, the level of communication is not harmonious. But it's so information that you get as a person trying to help may not necessarily be accurate. People tend to think other people are doing negative things, other people are being difficult, other people are causing problems, and they'll relay to you that this is a scenario, this is the case, they did this, they did this, they did this. Be often not an effective thing where the person says, and I did this, and I felt this, and I felt that, which is probably more important.
Yeah, I think that sort of thing sometimes, crystals can do their best at supporting, but if it really is heavy, then you need to be in a situation where there is collective care. So in other words, there's crystal therapists, maybe a counsellor, maybe and someone doing massage, so that so that it's not a single thing taking the weight.
Yeah, I also suppose that, for example, an extreme one would be sort of somebody leading a cult or something like that.
Yeah.
If they've chosen to do it,
Yeah.
they've broken the group dynamic, and so that the group energy is focused on them. It's
Yes, that's right. Yeah, that's why I say it's very difficult. The person doing the breaking's got to be terribly strong,
right.
and all you can do is support that. But they will probably need multi-skill help.
Right.
It's a
Yeah.
bit
So actually
like
as a
when
group
people
to-
have long.
Yeah, it's
Counsel
almost
group.
like you need a group to
Group to
get
counsel
that.
group.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like when people have long-term illnesses as well that they don't want to let go of, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's the
oh,
same.
yeah, and that is especially something as a therapist you just have to understand
Yeah.
that is just how it is, and that's the choice of your client.
Mm.
Even though that you know that it wouldn't take much sometimes to get out of it.
Yeah.
The thing is that you don't, in both those instances, you don't put on your armour and go wading in. What you do is you
Have
check.
you got armour, Simon?
You put on your armour and stay on the outside.
What you do is you just do what is appropriate
Yeah.
at that
Yeah.
time, and you don't get involved in evaluating the information you're given as being positive or negative.
So it's just appropriate.
So
What's
judgment.
appropriate?
Mm.
And
Judging.
that's when it's really hard because it can come back on you
Oh,
sometimes.
that's
Yeah.
what I'm saying. Well, it puts you onto the Cartman triangle.
Yeah.
You see, if you go into rescuer mode,
Mm.
you know as sure as eggs is eggs that you're going to end up victimised and and being accused of perpetrating some evil deed.
Mm.
And as soon as you slide onto Cartman,
Mm.
then you've got to seriously step back and get yourself back off it again.
Yeah.
So if you look at it from the other angle, and you wade in trying to save an individual from a family situation or a group, the rest of the family see you as separating or isolating or dragging away
Yeah, the
that
perpetrator.
member,
Yeah.
and you become the perpetrator.
Yeah.
So that's why you need to remain emotionally and actively neutral and just focus on the imbalances that you can deal with, and not get too drawn into the story that's being
Yeah.
told.
Yeah, it's your personal boundaries there are crucial.
Mm. Mm.
To actually be able to hold those.
Yeah. To pick up on another thread, because there's lots of threads with this one, is what you were saying about using protection as a crutch.
Yes.
Because, like in my life, there's been situations where I know I've got to go into that situation and be very well protected, but then as soon as I come out of the situation, it's like let go of the protection. Actually, once you feel safe and secure, because you can't have it as 24 hours.
Yeah, but you find, for example, it particularly happens with jewellery quite often, is people will have a particular piece of jewellery for protection, and they'll end up wearing it all the time, and won't want to take it off.
Yeah.
And then when they take it off, they don't feel right.
Yeah.
And it's because they haven't done the personal work to actually integrate and solidify their energies further, so they don't need to wear that thing all the time. It's like, don't use it as an excuse for not doing some work on yourself.
So it's put the boundary up and then suss out what it is that.
And try and develop yourself or understand it a bit more. But I mean, we all have to use protection when we know, like say, you need to put on the armour, go in a particular place. You think, I'm not going in there without any protection. But it's realising that on a day-to-day basis is that. In everyday situations, if you need it, then you need to do some work on yourself, or you need to have some healing done on you to actually help your boundaries to be strong by themselves.
So think of it as being like an overcoat or an umbrella.
Yeah.
You need those things when the weather determines that you'll get soaked if you don't have it.
Yeah.
But you don't have the umbrella up and wear the raincoat all the time just in case it's going to rain. You have to be aware of when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like stabilisers on a child's bike as well. That's support for until they've learnt to balance on the two wheels.
Yeah.
But you don't. Once you've learnt to balance on two wheels, you don't need stabilisers anymore. It's a question of progressing.
Yeah, and in fact, if you still had stabilisers, it actually reduce your ability to navigate and go places on your own.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they reduce your choices.
Yeah. Well, the way I always think about it is that you know, you can lock the door of your house, but if you don't give somebody the key, then the locked door is you know, superfluous.
Yeah.
So it's a case of, yes, protect yourself, but then work out why you need the protection in the first
exactly.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And realise that you can't, although we tend to externalise things and say, oh, it's their fault, it's this, it's that, it's whatever, but it's also the fact that you're allowing it, so it's looking at actually what is in you that's allowing the situation.
Yeah.
So if you're using support,
Yeah.
something that is supporting your energies, you're teaching your body how to be as efficient as possible within itself.
Yeah.
So that should be training your body systems to be more, to maintain equilibrium in
Yeah.
different situations.
Yeah.
So, I always find this quite interesting, because if you come from a shamanic tradition, there is much more attack, you know, a psychic attack that goes on in a shamanic tradition. Or if you read certain shamanic books,
I think that's accurate. It's
Yeah.
just acknowledged.
It's just acknowledged
Yeah.
more. I was going to say it's acknowledged more, and I think it
But
gets
from-
it gets acknowledged scarily,
Yeah.
sillily more in the hands-on healing-y sort of spiritual side as well.
but if you came from a traditional psychotherapy side, it's all, well, you're projecting onto the other person, so
Yeah,
probably the truth is somewhere in between.
which is why you always have to ask yourself what's really going on.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you know there are things out there, inverted commas.
yeah,
If you rub somebody up the wrong way, they'll hit you in the head.
yeah,
If you know how not to rub people up the wrong way, they won't hit you.
yeah,
And it basically boils down to that. If you cause friction,
yeah,
you'll get aggression.
yeah.
If you can learn not to cause friction, then you'll be ignored
Yeah.
on an energetic level.
Mm.
The trouble with some forms of self-empowerment
Yeah,
is it's big noise empowerment. it's white light, I'm here,
yeah.
I'm the best.
juicy. Yeah,
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
juicy.
I am
Yes,
very
I'm tasty.
I'm very
tasty.
tasty.
I'm the bestest.
Rump steak and chips.
Fillet. Yeah.
And
And I live at this address.
Yeah. And I live at this address, and then everything comes screaming into. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah, so it's
Yeah.
very much. I mean, that's if you read Castaneda and
yeah,
well, you know, before you get tired of the bullshit in it, then that's very much that sort of level of stuff. It's knowing to walk
lightly on the ground.
and all those
Yeah.
cliches. Yeah, or walk carefully and not
Yes.
just not stir up the dust wherever you go.
Yeah,
I mean, the main difference between that sort of indigenous old tradition and the modern civilized scientific tradition is that it tends to ignore all those subtle influences
Yeah.
and assumes that because he can't see something, it doesn't exist.
yeah,
Whereas in traditional society, the opposite is the fact that everything is believed and everything is real, whether it's in a mental
yeah.
reality or a physical or actual reality. So it's both extremes that are wrong.
Yeah. So the truth lies somewhere in between, and you need to keep an
Well,
open mind.
if we're just talking about human beings, the truth probably is somewhere completely different that we haven't
Right.
looked at yet.
Yeah.
Because it's all to do with storytelling. It's all to do with finding a place where your story fits in with consensus.
Yeah.